The Quiet Files. In March of 1997, 39 adults sat quietly inside a rented mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. They were not being held hostage. They were not under threat. They believed they were about to leave Earth. Outside, a comet burned across the night sky. Inside, beds were neatly arranged. Black clothing was folded with care. Personal belongings were labeled. Shoes were placed side by side. There was no panic, no struggle, no chaos. Only order, only obedience, only belief. Their leader told them this world was finished, that their bodies were vehicles, that salvation was not spiritual, it was extraterrestrial. He said a spacecraft followed the comet. He said it was waiting. And they believed him. Not because they were stupid, not because they were weak, but because over time, their identities had been replaced. Their doubts had been erased. Their humanity had been redefined. This wasn't mass hysteria, it was quiet surrender. And when authorities entered that mansion, they didn't find chaos. They found rows, identical, still, deliberate. 39 people who believed they had just ascended. This is the story of belief without resistance, control without chains, and a promise that the sky was not empty. This is Heaven's Gate. And this is The Quiet Files.
Marshall Applewhite was not born a cult leader.
He was born into a religious family in Texas. His father was a Presbyterian minister. Faith was not optional. It was structure. It was identity. It was expectation. And Marshall grew up believing he was meant for something significant. Not violent, not destructive, significant. He was intelligent, musically gifted, educated. He taught at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. Students described him as charismatic, articulate, expressive. But underneath that charm, there was conflict. Internal, spiritual, personal. He struggled with his sexuality, struggled with shame, struggled with the fear that something inside him was broken. And when his career collapsed after a scandal involving a male student, everything unraveled. Marriage ended, reputation gone, position lost. He didn't just lose a job, he lost identity. And that's when he met Bonnie Nettles, a nurse, a spiritual seeker, a woman who believed in astrology, reincarnation, cosmic destiny. She told him something that changed everything. She said they had known each other in a past life. She said they had been chosen for a mission beyond Earth. To most people, that sounds delusional. But to a man who had just lost everything, it sounded like purpose. Together, they began to reinterpret the Bible, not as metaphor, not as tradition, but as extraterrestrial code. Jesus wasn't divine, they said. He was an advanced being from another level of existence. The kingdom of heaven wasn't spiritual, it was physical, a higher evolutionary plane. And humanity? Humanity was stuck, trapped in biological containers they called vehicles. The body wasn't sacred, it was temporary equipment. This idea would become the foundation of everything. They began traveling, preaching, recruiting. They told audiences that Earth was about to be recycled, that only those who detached from human identity could survive. Families were left behind, careers abandoned, names replaced. Marshall became Do, Bonnie became T. Not husband and wife, not lovers, but shepherds of the next level. They demanded celibacy, uniformity, absolute obedience. No individuality, no romantic attachments, no independent thought. Because to ascend, you had to erase yourself first. When Bonnie Nettles died of cancer in 1985, it should have shattered the belief system. She wasn't supposed to die, but instead of breaking the movement, it radicalized it. Marshall reframed her death. She hadn't failed. She had advanced ahead of them. She had boarded early, and he would follow. From that moment on, the teachings grew colder, more controlled, more absolute. Technology became sacred. The group moved online in the 1990s, built websites, posted recruitment videos, spoke calmly into cameras about leaving Earth. They didn't look wild. They didn't look unhinged. They looked organized, precise, peaceful. That's what made them dangerous. Because the most powerful form of control is the one that feels voluntary. By 1997, Marshall Applewhite no longer saw himself as a teacher. He believed he was the final messenger, and when a comet appeared in the sky, he told his followers it was the sign. The spacecraft was here. The window was open, and the only thing left to shed was the vehicle. 39 people listened, and none of them believed they were dying. They believed they were graduating. Next, we step inside the mansion and into the final preparations. This is the quiet files. By March of 1997, they were ready. The mansion in Rancho Santa Fe looked like any other home in the neighborhood. Palm trees, stucco walls, quiet streets. Nothing about the exterior suggested history was about to be written inside. But inside, everything was deliberate. Mattresses were laid out in clean, even rows, white sheets pulled tight, black clothing folded with precision at the foot of each bed, shoes placed side by side, identical, measured, aligned. There was no chaos. There was structure. Wallets were gathered, watches removed, identification cards stacked neatly, each item labeled, each possession accounted for. It wasn't panic, it wasn't impulse, it was a checklist. Marshall Applewhite spoke calmly to them, not with rage, not with urgency, with certainty. He told them the comet Hale-Bopp was a marker, a signal. Behind it, he said, traveled a spacecraft, hidden, waiting. Earth was about to be recycled, corrupted beyond repair. But they had been chosen, not to die, to advance. They had already given up their names, given up families, given up identity. Now they would give up the final attachment, the vehicle. That was the word they used, vehicle. Not body, not life, vehicle. Language matters. When you rename death, you remove its power. They recorded farewell messages, calm voices, soft smiles, thanking Dew for guiding them. No trembling, no visible doubt. They believed they were about to wake up somewhere better, and that belief made everything orderly. They moved in small groups, quietly, following instruction. No resistance, no visible fear, just trust. By the time the final group prepared, the house was silent. Doors closed, lights dim. Outside, the comet continued its path across the sky, indifferent. When authorities entered days later, they didn't find overturned furniture. They didn't find struggle. They found rows, identical, still, deliberate. 39 individuals who believed they had just stepped onto something eternal. Next, we examine the psychology, how intelligent adults detach from reality without ever feeling insane. This is the quiet files. 39 people did not disappear into the sky. They died inside a rented mansion in California. They ingested a mixture of phenobarbital and alcohol. They placed plastic bags over their heads, and they lay down in rows. Each group prepared the next, until no one was left. This was not impulsive. It was scheduled. It was organized. It was rehearsed. They believed this was not suicide. They believed it was exiting the vehicle. That language mattered, because when you rename death, you soften its edge. Marshall Applewhite did not force them. He reframed reality. He convinced intelligent adults that their bodies were temporary containers, that Earth was corrupt, that a spacecraft followed the Hale-Bopp comet. And when you truly believe you are boarding something better, fear becomes irrelevant. There were no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no panic. Only rows, identical, deliberate. That is what makes this story different from other cult tragedies. It was quiet. No gunfire, no siege, no last-minute standoff. Just belief carried to its logical conclusion. This is what manipulation looks like when it is patient. It isolates. It redefines language. It replaces doubt with shame. And by the time the final act arrives, it feels like graduation. 39 people trusted a man who promised transcendence. The comet passed. No spacecraft descended. The sky remained empty. But what happened in that mansion is not about aliens. It is about the human need to belong, the hunger for certainty, the vulnerability that appears when identity collapses. Control does not always look violent. Sometimes it looks calm, organized, peaceful. And sometimes it convinces you that leaving is evolution. Remember them as people, not a punchline, not a conspiracy. 39 lives ended in silence, and the lesson remains. This is the Quiet Files.